Today on Capitol Hill, the House Oversight Subcommittee held a hearing on the USPS and Postmaster General Louis DeJoy's potential conflicts. The hearing is a precursor to the upcoming Wednesday deadline for USPS to comply with a subpoena for documents that Democrats say DeJoy has withheld from Congress. Meanwhile, the president continues to push the dangerous narrative that Democrats plan to steal the election using mail-in ballots. Earlier this month, Mr. Trump told voters in North Carolina to vote twice, once in person and once by mail, to test whether or not the system was fraud-proof. He repeated that request again this weekend on Twitter. It drew a quick response from North Carolina's Attorney General, who told voters, do not do what the president directs. With me now is North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein. Mr. Attorney General, thank you very much for being here. The president says mail in your ballot, then go to your polling place and ask if your ballot has been counted. If it has not been, then vote again. I want to get from you exactly what can happen to make sure that people know that their vote does get counted, because I know that there are Democrats and Republicans who are worried about whether their vote will get back if they mail it in. Can you go to a polling place, ask that question, and get an answer?
Well, it's a completely unnecessary thing to do, because when you get your mail-in ballot, and by the way, North Carolina is the first state in the country to have mailed out absentee mail-in ballots starting a week ago Friday, and already 25,000 North Carolinians have already voted. But it's unnecessary to go to the polling place to confirm, because you can do that online. You can either go check online, or there's an app that you can do through the State Board of Elections, which will affirmatively text or email you your status, your ballot status. So in my case, I've requested a mail-in ballot, and I got a text from the state board saying it's in the mail on its way to my home, and I should expect it in the next week.
What will you do if people do show up at their polling place and demand to know whether their vote has been counted and demand another ballot, even if they've already sent in their mail-in ballot?
Well, it's a waste of their time, first of all, and it puts them at greater exposure to crowds, which while the in-person voting is going to be safe, there's going to be social distancing and sanitation and masks. So it will be a safe exercise. It's just absolutely unnecessary. If folks are absolutely set on going to a polling place to confirm their ballot was received, just don't mail in your ballot. Just go and vote. If you're going to be there anyway, vote in person during the 17 days of early voting we have here in North Carolina, including 2 weekends, or vote on Election Day in your precinct. There's no reason to mail in your ballot if you know you're going to go to the voting booth in person.
So what happens if people do mail in a ballot and then go and vote again at a polling place? How do you make sure that they don't vote twice?
Well, we have absolute protections against anyone casting 2 ballots. If you mail in your ballot and it's received, you will be taken off the voter rolls, meaning that if you go in to vote, you will not be handed another ballot. The danger is when people have mailed in their ballot and it hasn't been received yet, and then they go to the voting booth to vote again because it hasn't been received. At that point, they have voted twice, and voting twice is a crime in North Carolina. The mail-in ballot will then be cast out, so it will not affect the election. It's just that these voters, because of the president's terrible advice, will have exposed themselves to criminal liability for no reason at all. Either vote in person or vote by mail. Don't do both.
One other question when it comes to polling places. I've been talking a lot to some former officials surrounding what's going to happen on Election Day, and they're concerned about intimidation at polling places by some of the president's supporters who are worried about mail-in ballots, because the president, after all, has been saying that if he loses, the only way he can lose is if the Democrats have stolen the election from him. What precautions is the state of North Carolina taking to make sure that polling places are a free and safe place to vote?
Absolutely. It's critical that voters know that they can go there and be free of any harassment, any intimidation. And our laws are strong about protecting the sanctity of voting locations, either early voting sites or each precinct. And we have precinct judges, we have witnesses. All of these people have a direct dialogue to local law enforcement. so that if there is anything that happens that's wrong, it can get an immediate response to ensure that any intimidation like that is immediately addressed.
North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for trying to make it clear to folks that if you mail in your vote and then you vote again at a polling place, you could be subject to criminal prosecution for voting twice. And that's what the president is recommending that you do. It's just a wild scenario, a wild world that we're living in right now. Mr. Attorney General, thank you very much.